afternoon and welcome to the Angry Astronaut. Appreciate everybody tuning in today. We have a pretty big episode today, at least in terms of, expected launches. It doesn't get any bigger than this. We have the upcoming launch of Starship, and as all of you know, I have been the voice of skepticism, the voice of caution, the voice saying that this isn't going to happen just yet, that we have more time to wait, there's still more hoops to jump through, etc., etc. I'm afraid I've reached the end of my rope on that one. There are very few steps remaining at this point, at least if SpaceX really wants to go for the gold at this time and they really want to push for orbit right here, right now, then there are very few steps they have remaining. When it comes right down to it, if they wanted to, all they have to do is carry out the 33 engine static fire, and assuming that everything survives that properly, then they will be able to proceed to launch, assuming, of course, that the FAA were to give their approval. And by the way, the FAA may already have given their approval as far as we know. That sort of thing tends to happen behind the scenes before it happens for the public. Everybody, now that everybody's joined me, thank you so much, Antonym. Really do appreciate that. And you're about to get me started onto a nice segue here. But before we do, where's everybody checking in from? And thank you so much, Chris. Really do appreciate the tenor. Thank you so much for that. Where's everybody checking in from today? Thanks very much about the blazer, by the way. Yes, I got this from Suits Direct in Plymouth, United Kingdom. Suits Direct, they're fantastic people, and it's not like they paid me to say that or anything. They give me really good discounts. They like me, but that's not a paid endorsement. Okay, let's see. Long Beach, California. All right. Ireland, hello. West of Ireland. We also have Athens, Georgia, England, hello, England, Roswell, New Mexico, Statesville, North Carolina, Dallas, Fort Myers, hello, Texas, West Palm Beach, Lincolnshire, Fort Myers, Derby, UK, Michigan, hello, Kilwinning, Scotland, hello, Southwest United Kingdom. So in other words, very close to where I was for a very long period of time. Eureka, Illinois, Houston, Texas, Indianapolis. Thanks very much. And yes, indeed, the Space Force has lots of interest in the Starship. Hello, Wales. Thanks for checking in. Billings, Montana, one of my favorite places. Love Billings, Montana. New Zealand. Hello, New Zealand. Fort Myers. Belgium. Hello, Nebraska. Hello. Athens, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Arkansas, Amsterdam, Texas again, Space Coast, Florida. All right, Bill, thanks for checking in. South Africa. All right, South Africa. One of my daughter's favorite places in the world, by the way. She spent a month and a half there just recently. Go Dogs. There we go. Titusville, Florida. Hello, Cocoa, Florida. Cocoa Beach, I would assume, Florida. Sheffield, hello, Sheffield. Alaska, boy, all over the world. And we have over 170 people already checked in and counting. The Netherlands, Atlanta, Georgia, Germany, and another one from Germany. Hello, thank you so much. St. Louis, Boise, Idaho, Ramsgate, UK, Wales again, Shrewsbury. Hello, Shrewsbury. Thanks so much for checking in. Wow, I'll tell you, so many people. Supax, thank you so much for the $20 Canadian. Supax, brother, really appreciate it every time you check in. So let's go ahead and transition from allow that to be a segue to what we're talking about here. Boca Chica is coming up faster than I thought it was. I would say that there's a very good chance that there's going to be an orbital launch attempt next month. It's not one of those situations where, Elon said, good chance in February, probably in March, and so it's more likely going to be April. It's none of that. I really don't think that that's the situation at this point. I do believe that a launch in February is a real possibility. As a matter of fact, a strong likelihood. I would say one of the things that could have messed it up would have been the wet dress rehearsal not going as expected, but everything, all the indications are, even though SpaceX doesn't, provide very thorough information on everything that they do, all the indications suggest that we had a very successful wet dress rehearsal. By the way, checking in again, Ukraine. Hello, Marina. Thank you so much. Our friend and correspondent from the Ukraine, who always provides us with updated information on what's going on there, in spite of all the dangers she's in on a regular basis. Thank you so much, Marina, for joining us here today. Denmark, Minnesota, Toronto. Yes, that is Treespire. That is where I'm heading to now. I do want to be there. And of course, herein lies the issue. And of course, you guys, I'm sure, could expect this. Any of you who watched my release today would know. And this, by the way, can be supported in any way, whether it be super chats or Patreon, PayPal, etc. I have a fundraising goal to try to reach in order to get to Boca Chica. Under normal circumstances, going, on the revenue that I pull in from the channel would not be much of a problem. However, the state of the economy and the state of YouTube, they have slashed all YouTube creators' revenues by at least 30%. It's put us back into a corner. Therefore, but I've got some good news as well. Number one, I don't have to pay for a plane ticket. Plane ticket is taken care of by some very generous supporters who are giving me their airline miles to fly to Harlingen on their miles. So no problem there. Also, a really good discount on a rental car, $150 for a whole week. So no big issue there. But the one thing, unfortunately, that is a problem, any hotel rooms in that area are just expensive. They just are. Harlingen is a serious business travelers destination, and then South Padre Island is a big tourist destination. You can't do that on the cheap. It's just not possible. So I've got that expense, and then on top of that, of course, you just have the gas, obviously, sundry expenses, and then the cost of the rental car. My estimation is, or my goal is $1,300. That's a lot. I don't, I'm not going to pretend that isn't a lot. That's a hell of a lot. At the same time, though, my average view count for one of these videos is 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 views at least. $1 from each of you, and there we are. Easy. As a matter of fact, we blew out the fundraising goal. So anyway, that's certainly doable. Once again, it can come in the form of super chats or in the form of Patreon or PayPal. I'm done with that for now, but just to let you know, that is my fundraising goal right now in order to be able to cover the expenses of going to Boca Chica for an entire week. So that's it as far as that's concerned. And once again, thank you very much for everyone's support and for the fact that you're watching, subscribing. All of those things makes a huge difference no matter what. So why do I believe this? Why do I believe that we are on the home stretch? Well, it's because SpaceX is now talking to us a lot about what they're up to. This isn't something from Elon. These aren't, somebody says when launch, and then Elon responds and saying, next month or 2 months from now, or July or whatever. All of these estimates that he threw out, none of which really meant anything. Instead, we're getting communications with SpaceX and also a schedule from SpaceX as to what's coming up next. And the only thing that's on the schedule now is the static fire. That's it. Oh, my dear Lord in heaven, a huge, massive push from Stephen. Thank you so much, Stephen Henderson. Boy, that made a big difference. Thank you so much. Big jump towards the fundraising goal there. Once again, thank you so much for your generosity. So, that being the case, we're getting much more specific bits of information from SpaceX. There's a question there: SpaceX intend to try a spin for Prime, or is it the 33 engine? My understanding is that it's going to be a full-fledged 33 engine static fire. Boom. And they're just going to go for it. That could very well blow up the rocket. It could blow up the tank farm too. I don't know. But I am going to be covering this, just so you know. I'll be covering it live. I have a partner in Boca Chica that's going to give me access to his stream, and I'm going to cover the static fire as it happens. John, thank you so much. Really appreciate your support. Balak Pooch's dog walking 1 pound. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. Like I say, just a bunch of those, and I'll be there. It doesn't have to be big contributions, and it makes a huge difference. Once again, thanks so much, guys, for making these sorts of things possible. So yeah, I mean that's why I feel that after all these months, I mean those of you who were watching me in 2021 may remember that I bet that I would eat my hat or eat a hat, a Boeing hat actually, if a Starship actually managed to lift off and get to orbit in 2021. Obviously, that wasn't even really a race at all. And then I, once again, didn't think it would go in 2022. Once again, that was also the case. And it's not because the FAA didn't issue a flight license or anything like that. It was because of, technical issues and developmental issues. The most powerful rocket in human history. That's not easy. And frankly, I thought it would still take a little bit of time from now, but that's not the case anymore. I think that we are now super close to that moment. Stewie, thank you so much for the fiver. Really do appreciate that. Once again, all of this making Boca Chica possible for me. If the 33 engine static fire doesn't go well, how long would it delay a first launch? Charlie, if the 33 engine static fire results in the destruction of the booster and the tank farm exploding or something like that, it would be 6 months at least, maybe a year. If it really creates a cataclysmic explosion or conflagration of some kind, it would be very damaging indeed. Now, if all it does is blow the booster to bits and do some damage to the tower and such, still the FAA and others will require an after action report to determine how much damage was done, what the potential dangers were of the exploding booster, that sort of thing. So that would still be a couple of months, maybe 3 months, in my opinion. So yeah, if something goes really wrong with that static fire, it will be a grim moment indeed. Now, as of course, as you may have noticed, they hauled S-24 back to work on it to get it prepped for launch. However, I don't think they cleared the pad of everything. I do believe that S-25 is still out there, which is very interesting. Once again, I mean, are you going to put more equipment out there in harm's way before you touch off a static fire? Now, if they clear the pad entirely of all vehicles except the booster, I think that's a very strong indication that there is about to be a static fire. Now, if they don't do that and pull off a static fire anyway, well, that wouldn't be totally unlike SpaceX to do something like that. They've done things like that before, but it's risky. I wouldn't see the point, but they might do it. Who knows? Paul, thank you so much for the tenor. Really do appreciate that. And I am also angry for Boca Chica. So yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of unanswered questions. Of course, the biggest one is going to be the FAA license, which, to our knowledge, still has not yet been issued. But my suspicion is that it's going to be happening soon. Subax, thank you so much for that pledge. That's awesome. I really do appreciate that. To my knowledge, S-24 got taken back for say it should go back to the scrap heap, in my opinion. That's what should happen to it. But honestly, I think Booster 7 should go back to the scrap heap too. I think in order to ensure the best possibility of a successful launch, you want the newest equipment that hasn't been through a lot of unpleasantness. For example, explosions on the pad during a spin up, as happened with Booster 7. But it's hard to say. Hard to say. Eric, thank you so much. Really do appreciate for the $5. Kid lives in Port Isabel. Well, that's Port Isabel's right up close to the action. Jebediah, thank you for the £2. Really do appreciate that. So yeah, I mean that's a big factor. Anybody in Port Isabel is going to hear that thing go off in a big way. I would say that if you have somebody in Port Isabel, make sure that they are very aware of exactly when that's supposed to happen. Because if something goes wrong with that static, even if it doesn't, it's going to be a serious noise, to say the least. Greg, thank you. Greg and Susan, thank you so much. Starship to orbit's what you've been waiting since Elon's 2016 electrifying speech. God, Ad Astra, yes, I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you so much for the $75. Roger, thank you so much for the 10. God, it's just flooding in. You guys are so fantastic. Thank you so much for your incredible support, getting me to Boca Chica to properly cover this. And just to be clear, I've got some really good stuff in place. I've got Rocket Ranch, who have generously provided me with a front row seat to all of this. I've got somebody who's very well equipped, got some great camera equipment, ready to act as my cameraman while I'm down there. He's my buddy at Mars Embassy. Make sure you subscribe to his channel while you're at it, by the way. He does some really good time lapses of everything that happens every day with Starship. Silas, the 60 euros, thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. And back at you to Switzerland, country I so want to visit someday soon. I wanted to make that happen during my last visit to Europe, but that was work, not pleasure. So one day, I definitely want to see the Alps, if nothing else. That's something my daughter got to see and I haven't. So definitely looking forward with that. Thank you so much for that. So yes, Rocket Ranch, Ellie. Yes, no doubt, Anton. That, to be clear, Ellie and I will be working together on the launch. There's no question about that. So yeah, huge stuff. I just got a notification. Mars Embassy, by the way, is uploading tons and tons of photographs and time lapse videos on his channel. Might want to make sure to check that out, because a lot of the stuff that he catches is some pretty amazing stuff indeed. Leonard, thank you so much for your the $20 Canadian. Boy, you guys are coming through so huge today. Wow, I'm just stunned. Thank you so much. So once again, that is where my sense of optimism is coming from. It's where my skepticism is starting to evaporate. Is a very clear plan is now being put forward by SpaceX, not just generalities from Elon, but instead SpaceX is putting forward their schedule, the next steps they have towards launch, and really there's just not much left. Assuming the static fire goes well, and that's a big if. But if the static fire goes well, there's nothing standing in their way except for an FAA launch license. And frankly, I think that if they show a successful, very good 33 engine static fire, I'm pretty certain that the FAA will grant a launch license in short order. I got to see what happened with the CAA, and the time frame that elapsed between their license being issued and launch, and it was a very fast turnaround in Britain, and that is in a system that I thought was more bureaucratic than ours. So I do believe that SpaceX is going to be well aware of when the license is likely to be issued. They aren't making, neither Elon nor SpaceX are making any statements of impatience about the launch license. I think that they are very confident indeed that that license is going to be issued imminently. So that being the case, I don't see a whole lot of barriers left. And once again, this is coming from somebody who's expressed lots of skepticism about this whole thing. Somebody who is willing to put his butt on the line, literally, when we're talking about launch time frames with Starship versus Vulcan. And for the first time, I'm really beginning to think that that Starship is going to win this race, which doesn't bother me really. We returned to the moon faster with Starship than without it. And I want to go to the moon more than I want anything. I want to see mankind return to the moon in a big way. No doubt FAA is anticipating for Starship to go well, just environmental groups holding them back. Yeah, what else is new? And once again, it's not that I dismiss everything environmental groups talk about. I don't. I think they have good points sometimes. But in the case of space launch, this is ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous compared to the amount of damage that chemical plants do and oil refineries and things. Space launch is minor. It's minuscule compared to the amount of benefit it brings to mankind. So I don't understand why they're focusing so much damn energy on it, but that's what they do. But there's indications there, or the evidence seems to support that that they're not going to get much of any place. That this is definitely going to be going forward. Look forward someday to having a Starship versus some kind of nuclear upper stage. Yeah, Bob, I think that that's very likely. Actually, I do believe that that a nuclear upper stage is something that could be integrated in Starship at some point in the future. And I think it will be very, very beneficial to Elon's long-term plans for Mars if that happens. So I do believe that nuclear and Starship need to be integrated in some way in the future. And then, yes, rather than launching a nuclear engine, assembling it in space, that's not a bad idea either. Although, according to their current plans, a small nuclear thermal engine will be launched, completed in the upper stage of a Vulcan Centaur. Or rather in the Vulcan Centaur, which is an upper stage. But in any event, that will be part of the Vulcan Centaur, and it will be demonstrated in that package. At least that's the current plan. Vulcan hasn't even flown yet, so who knows if that's what's actually going to happen. Will Starship be able to make a drone ship landing? The booster, yeah, I think that's their long-term plan, is to use a drone ship for a landing at some point. It's very big. It's a big booster. It'll be tough to do a drone ship landing with that. But I think that that is one of their plans. Unfortunately, they're going to be losing the booster on this particular launch, their first orbital launch attempt. Actually, in some ways, it may surprise you to hear that I disagree with that. I really think they should at least make an attempt to bring the booster back to Boca for a landing. I would like to see that happen because they're going to need to do it eventually. Starship is not a financially viable system if they blow up a booster and 33 engines on every launch. They've got to make that reusable. I don't think it would hurt to at least give it a shot with the first time. Yeah, if it blows up, it blows up, but at least try it. And there'll be a lot less propellant left in a super heavy booster if it attempts to land at Boca Chica than there would be during the launch. So that being the case, the explosion probably wouldn't be any more problematic than the SN-15 explosions, for example. On the previous video, talked about a lady who could design a next generation spacesuits. Yes, that was some time ago. Tim, I still don't have an update on that. It's unfortunate because those spacesuits are the reverse mechanical engineering solution to spacesuits. It's an excellent deal. I really think that that's something that they should focus on. It's just so much more logical. It's less vulnerable to cuts and rips in the fabric, causing explosive decompression. That doesn't happen with reverse mechanical engineering. It's lighter weight. It's easier to move in. I mean, there's so many pluses to that kind of spacesuit. Why nobody has funded it to any great degree is beyond me. Very frustrating indeed. So let's see here. Nuclear pulse, yeah. Now that's always interesting. The Orion nuclear pulse, and I've done a couple videos on nuclear pulse actually. I think that that's also very interesting. It's all line to scare people because you're talking about nuclear explosions in space. Something that might even be visible from Earth with the flashes, as the ship headed off. But a very effective and most constructive use of nuclear weapons that I can think of. But nevertheless, yeah, some problems with that. SpaceX is using the water landing to test the reentry and landing process as a booster. Yeah, I agree, Michael. It makes sense. It makes sense to go ahead and see what happens with it. But for me, I don't know. Try to make it work the way it's supposed to the first time, the way they tried to land SN8, for example, SN9. may as well give it a shot right off the bat. You're probably going to fail. I'd like to see it used the way it's supposed to be on the first try, no matter how unlikely it's supposed to be. But we'll see what ends up happening. If NASA didn't want to use SLS, they wanted to use Orion. Could they put Orion on disposable? Sure, they could. I mean, Orion is perfectly sized to fit inside a Starship's fairing. There are of course drawbacks to that because it would have to be more than just Orion. Starship would transport Orion to low Earth orbit, but at that point you would need something in the upper stage along with Orion, something in the fairing to propel Orion the rest of the way to the moon. SLS, of course, with ICPS is capable of blasting the Orion all the way into lunar orbit. Starship is not, and not the way it's currently designed. So you would need to have something built into the fairing, like a third stage, for example, with additional fuel, kind of a modified ICPS, if you will, to push Orion the rest of the way. But yes, it could work, definitely. General Atomics, yes, indeed. Forging nuclear swords into plows. What a great notion. Yes, I like that. I like that a great deal. Hello back, fellow Coloradan. Thank you so much for tuning in. So, once again, to reiterate the things that I've been talking about, I feel very optimistic at this point, maybe a little cautious, but still very optimistic that SpaceX intends to at least take a shot at this next month or at the latest in March. Thank you so much, by the way, Jim, for the tenor. Thank you so much for supporting me. So yes, that having been said, I do believe I would be very surprised if SpaceX doesn't at least try a launch in March. And actually, I'll be a little surprised if they don't try it in February, unless for some reason we don't get the FAA approval. But if we don't get that, SpaceX has made it very clear that the wet dress rehearsal, the WDR, was successful. That was a huge hurdle, and they've jumped it. The last hurdle remaining is the 33-engine static fire, which they apparently have scheduled for the beginning of next week. And as I say, I will be covering that when it happens. I'll be covering it through Mars Embassy, my partner, but nevertheless, we will be working together to bring you coverage of that momentous event. Thank you so much, Kai. Really do appreciate the $10. Very, very nice of you indeed. The tiles, yes, indeed. Again, when we're talking about re-entry, I will be just as shocked, even more shocked, actually, if Starship actually successfully re-enters. I think that will be a very, very difficult thing indeed. Nevertheless, do appreciate your support there. Thank you so much for helping me get to Boca Chica. So, if the 33-engine static fire goes as well as the wet dress rehearsal did, there'll be nothing standing in the way of SpaceX at least attempting an orbital launch. I'm not saying it's going to be successful, but I think they're going to go for it. If they can pull off a 33-engine static fire next week, I believe there will be nothing standing in their way of taking a shot at it in February. That having been said, it's time for me to knuckle down and start doing what's necessary to get to Boca Chica to cover this event. And you guys have made a huge difference to me today in making all of that possible. And I'll tell you, I so want to be there. The opportunities are huge. I have all the equipment, the support, the technical expertise that I need at Boca Chica. Rocket Ranch, once again, giving me a filming location just a few kilometers away from the pad. This is going to be an incredible event, guys. An event that all of us will remember for the rest of our lives, regardless of what happens. The launch of the most powerful rocket in human history is just around the corner. There's no way to understate the importance of that. The launch of the most powerful rocket in human history is just around the corner. I intend to be there for it. Thank you so much for your support. And as always, stay angry about space.